I've never felt smaller than I did the day my mother gave my brother a house and handed me a shoebox labeled leftovers. It happened at Caleb's wedding, right in front of 100 people under twinkling string lights and white satin drapes. My mother, Patricia Harper, in her signature blue suit and pearls, clinked her champagne glass and called for attention. Everyone quieted down. I was standing off to the side, next to my husband Daniel, sipping flat punch and trying not to feel invisible. I had helped plan this whole wedding. I arranged the florist, designed the menu, and even stayed up until 2 a.m., helping my mom stuff welcome bags for out-of-town guests. But that night, I was background noise, a ghost in a dress. "Before we wrap up this perfect day," my mom began, "there's one last gift we'd like to present to the newlyweds." Caleb grinned. He's always been the star of our family. Charming, ambitious, the golden boy. My mother reached into her oversized handbag and pulled out a red folder with a silver bow taped to the front. She handed it to Caleb and Sophia with theatrical flair. "This," she announced, "is the deed to your new house. 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, and a finished basement. Welcome home." There was a gasp, then applause. Guests cheered. Sophia wiped tears from her eyes. My brother hugged my mother so tightly, I thought she might lose her balance. I clapped too. I smiled. That's what you do, right? Even when your chest tightens and your stomach flips, even when it stings so hard you feel dizzy, you smile. You act like you're not the only adult child in the family who still rents a 1-bedroom apartment with cracked tiles and a leaky faucet. Then my mom turned toward me. "Oh, and for Leona," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We didn't forget about you." She rummaged again in that cavern of a handbag and pulled out a shoebox. It was wrapped in wrinkled newspaper and had a strip of duct tape across the top. The word leftovers was written on the tape in smudged black Sharpie. A few people laughed nervously. I took the box with both hands, trying to steady them. My cheeks flushed hot. I opened the lid. Inside was a single burnt piece of toast. No note, no explanation. Just a hard, black slice of something that had been forgotten in a toaster too long. It crumbled at the edges as I stared at it. "Guess that suits her," my Uncle Rick muttered with a chuckle. "She always liked the crusty stuff." He laughed louder than anyone else. I heard a few awkward giggles nearby. I looked at my mother. She gave a small, satisfied smile, then turned back to Caleb and Sophia, basking in their glow. I was holding charcoal. I was holding a message, loud and clear. Daniel's hand found mine. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I didn't want to cry in front of all those people. Not again. Not like at Christmas when my mom gave me a re-gifted candle and Caleb got a $2,000 watch. I swallowed everything I wanted to say. I closed the shoebox and hugged it to my chest like it was breakable. "Thank you," I said softly. I'm still not sure if it was to her or to myself. Daniel squeezed my fingers, then leaned in and whispered, "I'll meet you outside in 5 minutes." I nodded, still frozen in place. I don't remember much of what happened after that. Someone started music again. Guests went back to dancing and drinking. My mother laughed, a sound I hadn't heard directed at me in years. I walked out of the tent, away from the lights, holding my little box of shame. I stood under a tree where the grass was damp and the night air smelled like champagne and roses. I looked down at the toast, now cracked in two. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Daniel. He wasn't smiling. He looked like he was holding something in. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and held out a small silver key. "This is for you," he said, "come with me." That's when everything started to change. 3 weeks before the wedding, I was sitting on the floor of my mother's living room, tying tiny ribbons onto welcome gift bags. My fingers were blistered from hot glue burns, and my knees ached from hours on the hardwood. My mother stood above me, barking instructions like a general in stilettos. "Make sure you alternate the colors," she snapped, "and don't wrinkle the tissue paper. We want this to look elegant, not like a preschool project." "Yes, Mom," I said, though she never really listened when I answered. She was already turning her attention to Caleb, who was lounging on the couch with a beer in hand, scrolling on his phone. He hadn't lifted a finger. He never had to. Growing up, I always thought if I just worked hard enough, she'd see me. If I got straight A's, helped with chores, stayed out of trouble, she'd notice. But Caleb could wreck the car and still get a pat on the back and a new one a week later. "Do you want me to run to the store?" I asked that day, holding up a bag with a missing ribbon. We're out of gold. No, that's fine, she said, waving me off. I'll send Caleb. He drives faster. He didn't even look up. I went anyway. That's how it's always been. Me offering, her ignoring, and Caleb reaping the reward. At the wedding, nothing had changed. When I arrived that morning to help set up, my mom didn't even say hello. She pointed to a clipboard and said, "We're behind on florals. Take care of it." I did. I always do. I spent the morning coordinating with the florist, adjusting centerpieces, triple-checking place cards. I fixed a broken chair, ran to a nearby store for more votive candles, and even restitched a tear in Sophia's veil with an emergency sewing kit I kept in my purse. No one thanked me. They never do. When Caleb and Sophia walked down the aisle that afternoon, I smiled and clapped with everyone else. I meant it. I was happy for him, truly. But under that happiness was something quieter, something I didn't say out loud, a question that always lived inside me. Why am I never enough for her? My husband, Daniel, had asked me that once, months ago. He had watched her dismiss me at Thanksgiving when I offered to bring dessert, only to compliment Caleb's store-bought pie like it was a masterpiece. "Why do you let her treat you like that?" he asked me in the car afterward. "She doesn't mean to," I replied. "She just loves Caleb more, always has." Daniel didn't respond. He just held my hand the whole way home. The thing is, I'm not bitter by nature. I don't envy my brother. I love him. He's always been good to me in his own way. But watching our mother bend over backward for him, paying for his college, co-signing on his first car, decorating his apartment like it was a showroom, while I worked 2 jobs just to get through community college, it wears you down. And that night, under those glowing lights and perfect white drapes, I felt every ounce of that weight. The applause for the house gift still echoed in my ears when she handed me that box. Leftovers. Like I was a dog she barely remembered to feed. I stood in the garden afterward, away from the noise, watching the guests dance and laugh through the tent windows. They looked like a painting, framed by fabric and gold lights, and I felt like I'd fallen off the edge of the canvas. I wondered what I had done to deserve so little, what mistake I kept making. Then Daniel appeared, silent and steady, with that key in his hand. He didn't have to say much. He never did. His love wasn't loud or flashy. It was real. It showed up. It stayed. He took my hand and led me to the car. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You'll see," he said. We drove in silence, the shoebox sitting in my lap, toast still inside. The streetlights blurred past the window, and with every mile, something inside me started to shift. I didn't know it yet, but I was on my way to something bigger than forgiveness or understanding. I was on my way to becoming someone who finally stopped begging to be chosen. The ride to wherever Daniel was taking me felt like a dream I wasn't fully inside yet. I kept staring down at the box in my lap like it would shift and turn into something else. Like maybe this was all a joke, and hidden beneath the toast, I'd find a real gift, a letter, a reason. But there was nothing. Just the smell of burnt bread and cardboard. I looked over at Daniel. His jaw was tight, the muscle twitching just beneath his cheek. He hadn't said much since we left, and that silence spoke louder than anything. I could tell he was furious, not just at my mom, but at me too. Or maybe at the way I kept letting her do this. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "For what?" His voice wasn't angry, but it wasn't soft either. "For causing a scene." "You didn't cause a scene," he replied, eyes on the road. "She did." I didn't respond. I just looked out the window, watching streetlights flicker across the windshield. I felt like I was shrinking inside myself, like I'd been this invisible version of me for so long that I didn't even know what it felt like to stand tall anymore. That box had broken something in me. I kept remembering the way my mother said it. "We didn't forget about you." As if my life was a footnote, a reminder scribbled at the bottom of her to-do list. She used to say things like, "Leona's the responsible one," or "Leona doesn't need help." I wore that like a badge for most of my life, until I realized what it really meant was that I wasn't worth the effort, that needing less made me less in her eyes. And Rick, God, that laugh. It wasn't just a chuckle. It was a deep, cruel laugh that made people look. That made me feel small in a way I hadn't felt since middle school, when Mom forgot to pick me up after my piano recital and Rick had said, Maybe she walked home. Wouldn't be the first time she got left behind. That was always the theme of my life in that family. Forgotten, brushed aside, made into the punchline. I gripped the box tighter and felt the edges dent beneath my fingers. "Do you think she did it on purpose?" I asked. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Leona, she didn't just forget. She planned that." I stared at him, unsure whether I wanted to believe that or not. "I mean, come on," he continued. "A house for Caleb and a burnt toast in a box labeled leftovers for you? That wasn't a mistake. That was a message." "But why?" I whispered. "Because people like her need to feel powerful," he said. "And making you feel small is how she does that." His words hit me hard, not because they were new, but because they were true. And I'd been too scared to say them out loud. The house gift wasn't just a gift, it was a statement. Caleb is the one she loves, the one she invests in, the one she believes in. And me? I was the reminder of all the things she resented. I didn't follow the path she wanted. I didn't marry rich. I didn't give her grandbabies right away. I didn't become someone she could brag about at her book club. I became me, and that was never enough. "Do you want to know what the worst part is?" I said. I still wanted her to like me today. I still hoped she'd pull me aside and say, "I'm proud of you," like maybe this would be the day. Daniel's hand found mine, warm and firm. "She doesn't get to decide your worth." I wanted to believe that, I really did, but a part of me still ached from the sting of her rejection. As we pulled off the main road, Daniel turned into a quiet neighborhood. Charming little houses lined the street, each one with its porch lights on and neat little mailboxes out front. He slowed down and parked in front of a pale blue house with white shutters and a red front door. He got out, walked around to my side, and opened my door. "Come on," he said, "it's time." I stepped out, still holding the box. The air smelled like jasmine and fresh paint. Daniel walked ahead, pulled something out of his pocket, and handed it to me. The same key from earlier. "This is yours?" he said. I blinked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "I bought this house for you. For us. I've been working on it for months." The world felt like it stopped turning, and just like that, the balance of power shifted. The box in my hands weighed nothing now. I stood there in the driveway, holding the key in one hand and the shoebox in the other. The street was quiet, with the kind of soft calm you only find in neighborhoods where people wave at each other from their porches. Porch lights glowed behind white curtains. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked once, then went quiet. I looked at Daniel, stunned. "You bought this?" He nodded, his face calm but serious. "A few months ago, I found a fixer-upper and started working on it in secret. I wanted it to be a surprise." "For what?" "For you," he said. "For us. For your fresh start." I stared at the house. It wasn't huge, but it was beautiful. The front steps were newly painted, and a potted fern sat next to the door like it had been waiting for me. I glanced back down at the key. I couldn't stop shaking. I had spent so long asking for scraps that I didn't know what it felt like to be given something whole, something intentional. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "I wanted you to see it for the first time when you needed it most," he said. "And tonight, you needed to be reminded of who you really are." The words caught in my throat. I blinked fast, trying not to cry again. "But we don't have the money for this," I whispered. "I've been saving, and I got a side project that helped. You've been giving everything to your family, to your job, to everyone but yourself. I wanted to give something back to you." He reached out and gently took the box from my hands, setting it down on the porch. "You don't have to carry that anymore," he said. The symbolism hit me so hard I nearly staggered. For years, I'd been carrying emotional leftovers. Every ignored birthday, every forgotten achievement, every moment I stood behind my mother while she bragged about Caleb. I let it all sit inside me like burnt toast in a box, dry, bitter, hard to swallow. And now, here was Daniel. Not just loving me, but showing me what love is supposed to feel like. Solid, safe, chosen. I took a breath and stepped toward the front door. My hand trembled as I slid the key into the lock. The door opened smoothly, The living room was softly lit with string lights wrapped along the window frames. There was a brand new couch facing a stone fireplace. A small bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, sat on the windowsill. The smell of fresh paint mingled with lavender, and I noticed a welcome mat that read, "You are home." My chest tightened, but this time it wasn't with grief. It was something else, something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Daniel stepped in behind me. "It's not perfect yet," he said. "Still needs curtains, a little more furniture, but it's ours." I turned to him. "You didn't have to do this." He looked me in the eyes. "Yes, I did. Because I see you, all of you, and I refuse to let you believe that what your mother gave you tonight is all you deserve." That was the moment something shifted. I didn't just feel loved, I felt seen, and more importantly, I realized I had a choice. I could keep chasing my mother's approval like it was a prize I hadn't earned, or I could stop, take this key, and open the door to the life I could build for myself. "I want to live here," I said quietly. Daniel smiled. "Then it's yours." We stood in the living room hand in hand as the weight of that decision sank in. For once, I wasn't playing a supporting role in someone else's life. I wasn't the helper, the filler, the forgotten. I was the one standing in the light. That night, I didn't go back to the reception. I didn't text my mom. I didn't call Caleb to explain. I didn't owe them anything, not anymore. I was tired of begging for love from people who only knew how to withhold it. As I curled up on the new couch with Daniel, wrapped in a blanket that still smelled like a warehouse, I thought of the toast again, of the cruelty packed in that box, and then I thought of the key in my hand. One of them said, "You don't matter." The other said, "Start over." And for the first time in my life, I picked the second one. The next morning, I woke up on the new couch with sunlight pouring through the windows. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. The walls were bare. The floors still had painter's tape around the corners. But it felt more like home than my childhood house ever had. Daniel was already up, making coffee in the small, unfinished kitchen. He looked over and smiled like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. I sat up, running a hand through my hair, and realized I'd slept with the key still in my fist. It left a small imprint on my palm like it had branded me overnight with something permanent. "You hungry?" Daniel asked. "I can make something." I looked at him for a second. "Burnt toast?" He smirked. "Only if you want to start the day with vengeance." We both laughed, and the sound of it filled the room like sunlight. But the calm didn't last long. My phone buzzed with messages, first from Caleb, then Mom. "Mom, where are you? Are you seriously still upset over a joke?" "Don't be dramatic, Leona. You embarrassed me in front of everyone." Caleb, "Hey, can we talk?" "Mom's really upset. She didn't mean it like that. You know how she is. Please don't make this a thing." I stared at the screen, then turned it face down. I wasn't ready to be pulled back into their world. Not now. Not when I could still smell lavender and paint and the faint sweetness of coffee brewing. Daniel sat down beside me with 2 mugs and placed his hand on my knee. "You okay?" I nodded. "I'm not going back. I'm not going to act like that didn't happen." "You don't have to." "I want to say something," I told him. "Not for them. For me." That afternoon, we drove back to my mother's house. Not for revenge. Not to fight. I needed to return the box. The literal and emotional one. When we arrived, the wedding decorations were still up in the backyard. Empty wine bottles littered the tables, and flower petals clung to the damp grass. My mom was standing near the back patio with Uncle Rick, both of them smoking like they didn't just torch their daughter's dignity less than 24 hours earlier. She didn't smile when she saw me. "Well, look who decided to show up," she said. "Did your feelings finally settle down?" Daniel stood behind me, holding a small gift bag. He said nothing. I walked straight up to her and held out the shoebox. "This is yours," I said, my voice calm. She looked confused. "Why are you giving it back?" "Because I don't want to carry it anymore." Uncle Rick snorted. "It was just a joke, kid." I looked him in the eye. Number. It was cruelty dressed as humor, and I've spent my whole life accepting that from this family. My mother rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go. You're blowing this way out of proportion. You've always been sensitive." I smiled, but it wasn't the polite, "please don't hate me" smile I used to give her. It was the kind you wear when you finally come up for air. Maybe. But sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's just never fit in with how you love people. She opened her mouth, probably to argue, but Daniel stepped forward before she could. He handed her the gift bag. "This is for you," he said, voice low but clear. She frowned. "What is this?" "A key," he said. "The key to Leona's new house. It's paid for, it's hers, and that's where she lives now." She stared at him, stunned. Daniel looked at me. "Do you want to tell her, or should I?" "I'll do it," I said. I turned back to my mother and said the one thing I had never had the courage to say before. "I'm done chasing you. I'm done begging to be loved by someone who keeps handing me crumbs and calling it a feast. I'm not angry. I'm just done." She didn't respond. She looked like she wanted to, but nothing came out. Maybe because she finally realized I wasn't bluffing. This wasn't a tantrum. It was closure. Daniel and I walked back to the car. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I felt clean, lighter. As we drove away, I looked at the empty shoebox resting on the passenger seat floor. The toast was gone. I had tossed it in their trash on the way out. And just like that, I left behind everything I no longer needed. 2 weeks later, I stood in my new kitchen, barefoot on cool tile, stirring a pot of soup while a playlist hummed softly through the speaker. The curtains were up now, yellow linen with tiny embroidered flowers. I'd chosen them myself. There were still unopened boxes stacked against the walls, and the paint in the guest room hadn't dried right in one corner. But I didn't care. This place was mine, every imperfect inch of it. Daniel walked in with grocery bags and kissed the top of my head like he always did, like it was routine to show up with love. I leaned into him, letting that small, sacred moment land fully. This was what peace felt like. Since the wedding, I hadn't heard much from my mom. A few texts, mostly vague attempts at guilt-tripping me into Sunday dinner or telling me she didn't understand what she did wrong. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because I no longer felt obligated to explain my worth to someone determined not to see it. I think that's what changed the most. My silence wasn't about swallowing pain anymore. It was about choosing where I wanted my energy to go, and I didn't want to spend one more drop of it trying to make her comfortable with the boundaries I finally had the strength to set. Caleb texted too. His messages were more apologetic, more human. He said he didn't know she'd planned the toast thing, said he thought it was some dumb inside joke. I believed him, or at least I believed he wasn't trying to hurt me on purpose. But I also didn't go out of my way to soothe his guilt. This wasn't about making anyone else feel better. This was about me finally feeling like I belonged somewhere. One morning, I took the shoebox out of the coat closet. I kept it, not because I was holding on to the pain, but because I wanted to remember how far I'd come. I looked at the word leftovers scrawled across the duct tape and smiled, not with bitterness, but with something closer to gratitude. That box taught me everything I needed to know. It taught me that people will show you what they think you deserve, but you don't have to accept it. It taught me that love doesn't come from people who see you as convenient. It comes from the ones who see your worth when you're quiet, when you're messy, when you're nothing but yourself. I put the box in a drawer and closed it, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I had moved on. A week later, Daniel and I hosted a small dinner. Just close friends, warm lights, easy laughter. At one point, someone asked if I'd always lived here, and I paused, thinking of everything that brought me to that moment. "No," I said, "but now I do, and I'm not going anywhere." After everyone left, I sat on the front porch alone for a few minutes. The stars were out, scattered like sequins across the sky. I thought about how long I'd spent trying to be chosen, by my mom, by my family, by people who only saw me as useful or quiet or reliable. And now, here I was, finally realizing I never needed to be chosen. I had already chosen myself. Daniel stepped out with 2 mugs of tea and handed me one. We sat together in silence, shoulders touching, a calm kind of silence, the kind that wraps around you instead of pressing down. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm more than okay." We sat there for a while, listening to the night settle around us. Somewhere, a wind chime moved gently in the breeze. I thought about the girl who opened a box of burnt toast and smiled through the pain. I loved her. I grieved for her. But I wasn't her anymore. Now I was someone with keys in her hand, with a house that smelled like sunflowers and lavender, with a man who showed up not just in big gestures, but in small, steady ways. And I wasn't leftovers. I was the main course. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like the one left behind or the one who had to fight just to be seen, I want you to know you're not alone, and you deserve better. If you found meaning in this, please give it a thumbs up so more people can find it. Share it with someone who might need this reminder today. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your story, or even just a word of encouragement. Drop a comment below. And if you want more stories like this, real and raw and full of heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching. You matter more than you know.